We're going to start our discussion about monster artillery today with a personal favorite of mine, the steam tank for the Empire. Yes, a lot of people think this unit is a meme. I actually really like it in very specific matchups. This is one where, the High Elves tend not to have a ton of AP damage, so the 160 armor of the steam tank, which is the highest of any unit in the entire game, can do great here. 7,000 HP, or almost, before he gets beamed by a Lithnar, rather. Got very decent missile strength as well. Let's pop it briefly into fast forward, just talk about a few things. Basically, the missile damage here hits about as hard as, many units melee attack, like many monsters melee attack, rather. Currently it is poison, so it's a little bit down there, but yeah, decent weapon strength as well. 80 charge bonus, of course, unbreakable. Only 36 attack and 10 defense, so pretty poor melee stats, but it is faster than most other monster artillery at, currently only 37 speed because of the poison, but it's base like 50-something. And then, what else is there to say? We'll talk about it more as the battle goes on. Here I've got Balthazar Gelt leading this force, got a whole bunch of spearmen and halberdiers, 4 crossbowmen immediately peppering these Illyrian Reavers. We've got some pistoliers protecting this flank as well. Some of them already getting blasted by the Reavers in return. We've got some Shadow Walkers. This is a Catan once again with a wonderful Elithnar build. He's got lore of rust here, lore of metal rather. And Demogryph Knights with Warrior Priests rushing in on this side. Going to be going after these Rangers. The Fireborn are also here. The Dovahkiin Elves. They are going to be kind of charging in and out there, so we've got a little bit of a pitched engagement. I'm going to just swing and miss completely. This is a final transmutation that literally did not hit a single thing, so that's great. Meanwhile, the other final transmutation does hit the Demogryph Knights, which is not great, but the steam tank is going to be used here in more of a chariot role than actually a monster artillery role. And that is one of the main benefits of the steam tank. Kind of, if you think about other monster artillery pieces, I would say the Necrofex does have some melee power. It's pretty decent at fighting infantry and cavalry. It will struggle against characters on foot or on horseback for the most part, but the lack of speed and armor means it's much, much squishier than the steam tank. Likewise, the Stegadon, which is probably the best in melee of any unit in this class, again, does not have the same speed and charge, slightly lower charge, just better overall melee stats, but the steam tank's kind of speed and small hitbox do give it some advantages there. Trying my best to protect this backline here against the Reavers and the Silver Helms coming in. The Fireborn also come in. We hit them with a little counter charge here. Demogryph Knight's going to eat quite a bit of pain here as I'm saving my Winds of Magic to try and heal the steam tank in the late game. So Demis unfortunately won't get any healing. I do have a Lore of Lifecaster in addition to Balthazar. Currently both kind of holding up with these halberdiers supporting their leadership against these Rangers. The Rangers have so far done a good job. Meanwhile, we've got a cavalry missile engagement where the Pistoliers show their clear advantage in DPS in very cost effectively beating back those Reavers. Silver Helms as well pressuring, but look at this, even with Overcast or just regular Plague of Rust, still 130 armor. Obviously Overcast Plague of Rust would put it still at 100 armor, which is just ridiculous. Steam tanks, because of that insanely high armor against factions which don't have great AP, which mainly I would think of the High Elves and Bretonnia as two good candidate factions, the steam tank can generate great value against them, and in general, it's a nice kind of surprise tool to deal in a few different matchups. You can see here just consistently pressuring these Shadow Walkers, not allowing them to get set and keep firing. The poison will kind of be a little bit of an issue there, but Lithnar also plinking away. Here comes that regrowth I was mentioning. I was saving up my Winds of Magic for that, try and get the steam tank, nice and healthy. So it's going to continue to do its thing. It is tanking a lot of damage as well. Get it? Steam tank. Anyway, Demis charge in here for a final pitched engagement against these Silver Helms. They should be able to beat them back, but with some supporting Rangers in here. These Demis are not long for this world. The Crossbowmen have taken a little bit of a savaging, but they're alright since they're pretty cheap. They've still got quite a few unit models online they can contribute in this late game situation here. And Balthazar comes over here to attempt. He was chasing. The Fireborn were actually routed. He was chasing them off. They come back from rout, throw a Plague of Rust on him to see if he can't kill a few of their models, but they have just such ridiculously high stats that this handful of Fireborn is going to beat Balthazar and actually just kill him. Yeah, good job, Balthazar. So keeping Katam in this fight a little bit. Another Plague of Rust, this time Overcast, and you can see still 100 armor on that Steam Tank. Absolutely insane. Just very tanky in that way. Obviously not tanky in melee because of that low melee defense. Like, non-armor piercing attacks will do basically nothing, but everything has a little bit of AP, and that will come through over time. You definitely have to be careful of units which, of course, have direct AP, but Lithanar, now Katam gets a really nice play with a decoy, and I bite on the bait here with my Warrior Priest and with these Pistoliers. They are currently fighting the Summon Elithanar, which is not great for me. The rest of the Shadow Walkers and Elithanar using up their ammo, trying to take out that Steam Tank, dealing whatever damage they can. Also going after, it looks like, the Jade Wizard, but with Balthazar gone, it's going to be up to the Warrior Priest and the Jade Wizard to lead the Empire forces to victory here. You can see those crossbowmen throwing some bolts over there at the Rangers as they advance. The Rangers are going to think twice about their life decisions. Speaking of life, Jade Wizard gets routed off here by the Metal Mage and by Lithnar's shots, but, oh man, suddenly the Steam Tank turns around and he says, you know, Lithnar, a lot of people consider you like a single-entity bolt thrower. Well, guess what? I'm a single-entity cannon, except, you know, twice the missile damage of a regular cannon, and also a chariot, which means that this can happen. So Lithnar very quickly speed-walking off the battlefield, being helped by the steam engine that can. They're being chased now by the Metal Mage, and the Warrior Priest juicing himself up with the Hammer of Sigmar, which did also hit that Steam Tank. So yeah, gonna be a quick one. I do have another replay to show you with the Steam Tank, and a Lithanar, actually. But yeah, the Steam Tank is a powerful tool in this matchup, like I said, against Bretonnia as well. Certain other matchups can be tough if they have really good counter monster tools. A lot of people won't expect, you know, monsters, quote-unquote, against Empire, but generally the things that would counter heavy cavalry also have the ability to counter the Steam Tank. So many factions will have tools to deal with it, and any faction that can outshoot you is not a good idea to bring the Steam Tank because it's a very expensive target to shoot at, and what would you know, Dawi cannons make great anti-tank guns, so now you all know. Anyway, well played to Katam there. Yeah, Balthazar not really getting much value here, mostly just providing extra winds of magic, more or less. Really screwed up with his final transmutation there, but helping to hold up some leadership. Warrior Priest, 1100 damage value, so he pays for himself pretty much, in addition to the buffs. Gave the Demigryph Knights, who didn't perform great, but they're here, you know. The Spearmen with shields, honestly, very nice. Halberds I'm a huge fan of right now, even though one of them actually did very much pay for themselves. The other one's not so much, but the crossbows, of course, talked a lot about this recently, but cheap ranged units, like the cheaper the better almost, to a degree, and crossbowmen are in a really nice sweet spot where they're below 500 points. They still have great AP values, and just as a result, they're great all-around kind of Swiss Army knife skirmishers. Be used against any targets, and they will generally pay for themselves as they did here. Pistoliers also trading nicely against those Lyrian Reaver archers. Not only did we have, you know, greater DPS on individual units, but more volume of fire too, for 3 versus 2. So that is an advantage to me, and one of those Pistoliers in particular, 1100 damage value, absolutely excellent. The Steam Tank, interestingly enough, didn't even pay for itself in terms of damage value, but it did soak a lot of damage, basically all of the ammunition of these Shadow Walkers, right? Which you can see both of them basically paid for themselves. As well as, you know, a lot of shots from Elithanar, who, again, generated quite a bit of value. Because the Steam Tank can tank damage, unlike a lot of other units, especially on the Empire roster, you can very much use it as a distraction card effect, sort of like I did here, where it's, you know, marauding around your opponent's backline. Still got some chevrons and some pretty decent damage value. 7,000 damage dealt, 1,500 damage value. In terms of Katam here, yeah, like I said, Elithanar actually shines through, and recently with the damage valuations, I've seen that Elithanar actually can pay for himself in terms of damage output pretty consistently. He's probably a very underrated lord, and I'm going to be featuring him soon with some other replays. But yeah, Shadow Walkers are also a fun unit that I think probably will see some more use. The Fireborn actually paid for themselves, which is surprising, just barely, but Reavers had a bit of a tough time. But very well played to Katam, and yeah, let's go ahead. I do have another Steam Tank replay to show you, so let's get to it. And we're back with, this time, Franz and a Steam Tank, and this has actually been submitted by the High Elf player here. This is Norman. He's got, again, a Lithanar versus a Steam Tank, so we're going to see similar builds, but different. definitely. One thing I'll note about this Empire build is it's much smaller. Carl here is pretty expensive, as is the Steam Tank. There is a healer, but then you've just got the Spears and Outriders, one Reiksguard, so a bit of a thinner build, definitely. And the High Elves here coming in with Dual Caster, High Mage on a Chariot, very fun choice. In addition to the Plague of Rust caster, literally only Plague of Rust on that Lore of Metal Mage, and this combination is going to be absolutely brutal for Carl here. He gets lit up by the Storm Riders, the Regiment of Renowned Lothern Sea Guard, who had vanguarded up here on the top of the hill, along with those Shadow Warriors, getting crumped by Reiksguard, more Shadow Warriors, and look at that! France just straight up goes down. So already we're kind of setting the tone that this replay is going to be a little bit different from the last one, but I do want to highlight, of course, the Steam Tank, and how Norman goes about kind of countering it here. So, strap yourselves in. Reiksguard are pulling away, Silverhelm's doing okay, and the Shadow Warriors did take quite a bit of damage there, but yeah, unfortunately the Outriders being relatively more expensive, not as great a volume, they don't have any direct counterfire for these Shadow Warriors. The Shadow Warriors will be able to do quite well here. The Steam Tank, for now, just kind of tying up these Lothern Sea Guard in the back line. You can see, even with their 53 melee defense, they are going to be taking pretty consistent damage. You would want to cycle charge with this Steam Tank as much as you can, but, I mean, 18 bonus versus infantry, putting them at, what, 54 melee attack against infantry, so their base hit chance, more or less, against those Lothern Sea Guard in sustained combat, the Steam Tank is, so that's pretty nice. Looks like we've got a regrowth as well being used on the Royal Altdorf Gryphites there, probably a decent choice. Meanwhile, because the Empire force is a little bit small, Norman's able to wrap these Illyrian Reavers around the flanks here. Silverhelms as well start getting some rear charges, cleaning up. Unfortunately, these Shadow Warriors are now engaged as Spearmen with shields, not great. And Storm Riders also getting smashed by some Reiksguard. Steam Tank still completely healthy here, and there's not really a lot of tools, similar to the last build, there's not a lot of tools that are going to be great for dealing directly with the Steam Tank, but here, you'll notice that Norman's he's gonna pop this little decoy here. It doesn't look like the Empire bit, but he does actually stagger, which is interestingly enough, the decoy can stagger the mage there, and now instead, as Lithnar drops off into stock, they're gonna charge the Shadow Warriors here. That then allows the demis to get rear charged by everyone else. Steam Tank this whole time is mostly just being ignored, right? Where is it at? Yeah, it's over here kind of ping-ponging between different tattered High Elf units trying to get some terror routes, which is the right play. But at the same time, you know, being caught out, especially away from this cavalry engagement, like the Steam Tank could use its main gun to fire in here. A little bit danger close, but to maybe try and take out some of these Reavers. The Reiksguard, though, do come in, and this pitched cavalry engagement, Silver Guard are also going to kind of filter in here, so both players escalating this fight considerably, throwing in more and more resources. Steam Tank is almost in the fight. You see how that pops the terror for the Reavers, but the Silver Guard are going to be a problem. Silver Guard we've talked about a little bit recently in my kind of mid-tier Spears video, and as I talked about Tomb Guard with Halberds and the Chaos Warriors with Halberds as well. They do have a 20 bonus versus large, so they're going to be hitting 51 melee attack. That's basically, yeah, like, what is that, 75% chance to hit, just as an estimation, against the Steam Tank, because it only has 10 melee defense. So they're going to be getting consistent hits, even though they don't have amazing AP values. That 20 bonus versus large, if we look at their base proportion, it's, yeah, what, like 1/4 armor piercing, so probably 5 of that bonus versus large is armor piercing as well, putting them up to 13 AP, and considering they're going to be getting basically consistent hits here, you'll see how the Steam Tank's health starts to drop despite its armor there. Silver Guard will be a decent-ish counter for it. Unfortunately, though, Demi's surviving here. They're going to take out that High Mage on the Chariot. She gets quickly terrified, although, yeah, she's probably been able to do some okay anti-infantry work. Most of the infantry for the Empire is gone, but this Steam Tank is still very healthy and could be a problem, like we saw last time, not to mention Royal Altdorf Gryphite still operational, Outrider still online as well. So, let's see how this goes. Lithnar will get punted there. Actually, with his 57 melee defense and very good melee attack as well, 67. He can kind of stand and fight as the Steam Tank. Oh, I mean, Steam Tank, its attack animations will stagger pretty consistently, even with the changes to bracing. Lithnar also isn't, you know, one of those foot characters that's very hard to knock over. Like, he doesn't have the knockover resistance chance or anything. He's not a melee combat character. He's going to try and disengage there. And again, look at these Silverin guards, how they're not getting knocked over. That is definitely a benefit. The attack animation, though, you can see specifically does knock them over pretty consistently. And once there's only a couple of models blocking the way, the Steam Tank can disengage there. So it's going to continue to go after a Lithnar. The Outriders are trying their best to shoot in here, go after these Silver Helms, but Shadow Warriors still hanging around, doing a good job counter-pressuring there. And we're going to see a similar situation to last time, where Lithnar starts to get completely chased off. And by chased off, I mean pushed off by the Steam Tank, going full-on Holy Roller style. But eventually, I believe he gets knocked over here. Yeah, he's not actually taking any damage there, and it looks like the High Mage is coming in on her chariot, on her Tyrannok chariot there. Some Silver Helms also immediately rout as they try and bail out Lithnar. But the Outriders there, they won't do a ton of damage to the Shadow Walkers in melee just because they don't have good stats at all, but they'll at least keep them from firing back at the Outriders. Outriders can shoot while they're moving, take a few pot shots at these Storm Riders. The Silverin Guards with their high missile block chance will be tough targets, and that is going to be an issue for the Empire in general here. It's just that the Silverin Guards are good against everything the Empire has left, right? They're good against these Reiksguard, good against the Steam Tank. Obviously, they're good against the Outriders as well. But a nice little combined heal here. Hits all targets with that Earthblood, so well played by the Empire player. Lithnar comes in with the High Mage. They're going to 2v1 on the Steam Tank, at least for a minute, and then pull back and away through their own Silverin Guard, kind of trapping the Empire units up against them. The Empire's managed to keep this close, despite getting Karl Franz completely decked at the beginning of the battle by mass archer fire. And a little bit of a heal on the Lithnar, just some nice trickle heal from Apotheosis, very nice. This is the problem though, the Steam Tank kind of showcasing its downside. Because it's very expensive, if you don't have a wide enough build to support it, you can get in a situation like this where it is, you know, caught alone against all these Silverin Guards, and it really should be, oh man, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Nice point blank cannon shot right in the face, blows up like 10 models, but the Steam Tank's not actually doing any attack animations right now, which is potentially a problem. Reiksguard get pushed away here from getting a good rear charge. Some nice positioning here by Norman to keep these Silverin Guards in place. The Tyrannok chariot gets terrified, but you can see how the Steam Tank is just taking consistent damage here. And not only that, but Lithnar also shooting in, as is his doppelganger. And the Outrider volume is just not enough to really deal with these Silverin Guards. Likewise, there's, what, 5 Royal Altdorf fights left. Really don't have much stopping power at all, and I mean, against infantry, only 48 charge, 41 attack. For a unit this expensive, really is not amazing. So yeah, it is going to be, spoiler alert, victory for the High Elves, as you can see, but the Steam Tank has still managed to generate quite a bit of value here. We take a look at the damage valuation, 2,000 damage value, which is pretty good, almost paid for itself, even in defeat there. And even, you know, with having a very, very bad situation to be put in, I do think that the Empire player's build didn't synergize great with this, specifically with the Steam Tank. Like I said, I think it's beneficial to go wide around the Steam Tank, especially because Empire has such cost-effective low-tier troops and such great support abilities. You can make those low-tier troops trade very well upwards. And, yeah, as a result, they do quite well. The Steam Tank then kind of acting as your one kind of big expensive, like I said, distraction Carnifex. It's sort of a big tool that your opponent either will ignore or will try and deal with. And in this situation, most of the time it is right to say ignore it until the end, as long as you have the tools to deal with it in the late game. That's more or less what Norman did here. It's not like he was dedicating a lot of resources to try and take out the Steam Tank, which is, I think, Katam and I were in chat during the last game, and I think he mentioned that was a mistake he thought he made, was trying too hard to focus the Steam Tank. I would generally agree. This is the situation where you want to take it down in the late game when it's isolated from its support units. It blows up there, and that triggers army losses, or Skarmsnick here throws in the towel. But yeah, even in defeat there, does pay for itself. 2,400 damage value, 12,000 damage dealt over the course of a long battle. Absolutely awesome. Very strong unit when used correctly. like I said, if there's a faction that's going to outshoot you, it may not be the best choice. High Elves typically won't try and outshoot you. Even if they do, generally, if you have the right build setup, especially with a lot of heavy cavalry, you can just smash them, right? But, I mean, obviously, factions like Dwarfs, Coast, Wood Elves, I would not recommend taking the Steam Tank against. Most other matchups, you could probably make it work, like Chaos. Some of the more melee-centric factions, it could be tougher, like Chaos, Greenskins, Norska. Beastmen might be susceptible to it. Skaven is tough because it could face some counterfire, but again, if you set up your build correctly, you know, maybe not. The Chariot aspect of it is very good, and the Terror, obviously, against the Skaven. So there is some consideration there. But anyway, taking a look here, yeah, Karl gets wrecked, which probably ends up costing Skarmsnick the game here at the end of the day. But man, Reiksguard also, 2,400 damage value. That is one of the better performances I've seen recently from Reiksguard, and I do think this is one matchup where the Reiksguard can shine because of their extra armor and stats over Empire Knights. Royal Altar of Griffites also paying for themselves. The Outriders did pretty decently too, at least 2 of them paying for themselves, but Karl was just a lot of value to lose out on immediately. Olithnar, again, pays for himself. The casters, the High Mage on the Chariot actually gets some pretty good damage value. The Metal Mage is literally only here for Plague of Rust, which I'm a fan of that, just taking, you know, the caster with only Plague of Rust. Since High Elves don't have great AP, it's a way to sort of get AP, right? Silver and Guard also holding the line, some of them doing very well, actually, 1,600 damage value. Very nice. Shadow Warriors getting crumped a little bit, but one of them actually doing very well. Likewise, the Storm Riders do pay for themselves. Reavers, a little bit of a mixed bag. Same with the Silver Helms, but these guys are mostly here just for blocking Empire Cav, holding things in place so the Archers and Spears can do their work. So, yeah, a win and a loss for the Steam Tank, but both pretty good replays, I thought, to showcase its power. And I've talked quite a bit about matchups already, but just to kind of finish things out here, I'm going to be discussing some more monster artillery going forward, but just to sort of give you guys a little bit of a preview of that ongoing discussion, we'll just kind of evaluate what do I mean exactly by monster artillery. So I'm saying like a single entity unit that has artillery range and power, but also causes terror, and is a, you know, kind of all-in-one unit. Queen Best would not count, right, because she has an artillery crew, but a Necrofex absolutely would, and a Necrofex is quite strong unit in this class. You've also got like the Solar Engine and the Stegodon, both from Lizardmen. You've got the Cygor for the Beastmen, right? And these are kind of your main ones. If I just kind of think through the other factions here, you could maybe make an argument to include like the Medusa or the Ancient Salamander, although their range is pretty short, all things considered, right? Like if we look at the, where's the Sally? Here it is. Yeah, 160 range is more on par with like you know, like a regular skirmish unit, right? Like if we look, handgunners have 145. Yeah, 160 range is literally the same as crossbowmen, so I wouldn't really include the Ancient Salamander or the Medusa for that reason, because their range is more comparable to like a regular skirmish unit. I don't necessarily consider them monster artillery, right? So I just wanted to kind of define that for you guys. And there is, I mean, Greenskins have like their one regiment of renown, right? That's this guy here, the big-in rogue idol that can throw rocks, basically is like a Cygor. We're going to leave him out because he's a one-off and isn't super relevant to this discussion. Oh, I am forgetting one very important one, obviously. Tomb King's Bone Giant is a super strong candidate in this class, only 1,600 points, and has the highest single-target missile damage of any of these. 200 bonus versus large, absolutely nuts here. Yeah, it does a crazy amount of damage versus large targets, and only 1,600 points, but one of the worst in melee. If we look here, Solar Engine probably has, in my opinion, the best missile attack because of its contact effect. It also has flaming magic damage, which is situationally very nice, and only 1,100 points means it's the cheapest in this class, which is definitely an advantage. It's literally half the cost of the Steam Tank, right? You can take 2 Solar Engines for a single Steam Tank. The Stegodon has the worst shooting attack of any units in this class, but I would say it's the best in melee. So as a monster artillery, it's not great. As a monster, it's very good. So, interesting. Steam Tank is in an interesting spot because it's a single entity chariot. Really, it's not like fully a monster, right? Like in the way that these others are. It functions as a chariot, and it can, you know, pull through units a little more easily. It's faster as well, I guess 48 speed, which is, you know, it's considerably, I guess not considerably, wow, the Necrofex is 45 speed. That's actually pretty impressive. 39 for the Cygor. Two Lizardman ones are, you know, 50 speed really for the Stegodon. So I guess the Stegodon's technically faster, but it's less responsive as it is a much bigger unit. It can't, like, turn as easily and so on. Anyway, the Steam Tank has one of the better missile attacks in this, but it does get outclassed by the Bone Giant. It's the most expensive, too, which is a little bit of an issue. 160 armor unbreakable is nice, but it doesn't have the best direct melee stats in the world. Its melee power really comes from the fact that you can cycle charge with it until the end of days, right? Necrofex is very good in that it can be healed. Its missile attack is also devastating against infantry and cavalry. It can also fight infantry and cavalry in melee reasonably well, so Necrofex is probably towards the top of this classification. Cygor is an interesting one. Doesn't have a lot of armor, but again, decent melee hitting power, actually very decent melee hitting power, and awesome missile strength as well. Not to mention you have a great Regiment of Renown that has a hard snare, which is always nice. Necrofex ROR, again, I would consider this more like the Medusa or the Salamander in that it's a little bit shorter range. It's kind of like a different role, right? But yeah, that's the discussion for today. We'll be kind of ranking these as I talk more about them individually, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Like the video if you found it useful, share it with a friend. I really appreciate that. Thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.